Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and I have returned from commentating the Gamescom Creator Clash Arena Tournament, the first LAN in years between Europe and North America. It had a ton of surprises. I was very happy with the tournament overall, and hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know the content has been absent since I've been gone, but we're here, we're back, and we're going to be starting with a banger. We're going to be reviewing all of the announced projects with the next expansion, Midnight. We're going to be ranking them based on what's got me the most excited. We're going to be talking about things that they didn't talk about, and I'm going to be doing my best to consolidate all of this into one video in one location, because I've seen it as a lot of feedback from players or viewers observing the next expansion news, is that it's scattered all over the place. So I wanted to just amalgamate it all here into one location so that we can kind of clearly talk about it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, which is directly related to what most of my involvement with the game is, which is PvP, right? There wasn't a huge amount of discussion to it. I think the two main focus points were that they are initiating a training ground, which is just going to be playing against computers or playing against AI, which I think is a good idea. I've said this in the past that when I've played other games like League of Legends, the first thing I did was play against bots. And it was because I didn't know how to buy items. I didn't know how to last hit. I didn't want to be a liability to my team while I was figuring out how to do that stuff. It was very intimidating. I just played against bots. I figured out build orders. I figured out laning against bots until I built up my confidence and felt like I got a better understanding of the game, and then graduated in kind of like random queuing and then into ranked queuing. I do think this is a good way of onboarding players into PvP, and it's available in all other games. So, and it's going to be available also for different maps. Right now they have the Comp Stomp, but it's only for Wrathy Basin, so they're going to be including more maps. This is meant to be able to help you maybe re-roll to a different spec if you want a little bit of practice with it, or maybe learn some maps. But I mean, all these maps have been out for years right now, but I guess if you're completely new, that would be a good idea. And I do think that the fact that they're focusing in on the entry level of PvP is a good thing, because there's a lot of us at the top level. The issue is getting new people in the door, getting them to stick and stay long term, so that they can eventually rise the ranks as well. So I think this is good that they're focusing in on this. And then the next major announcement was that they're going to be doing a new epic battleground, and this is 40 versus 40. Now, they spent a lot of time on Ashran, which is very similarly outlined to this, a world PvP zone, then became an epic battleground. And they put a lot of time into it. My major criticism for the epic battlegrounds at the moment is if they end up being just a 40 versus 40 clump in the middle, it's a very bad experience. It's very laggy. You're just not able to do very much. If you're a melee DPS, you're just completely useless, lagging out and then dying. And then obviously the queue syncing issues that they said they were going to address earlier before this patch, as far as preventing players from using third-party sources in order to queue. Maybe they'll be able to fully lock that in when they actually disable add-ons, because that's another major inclusion with this post that we're going to be covering, which is like the baseline UI. My hope is that they can just either ban the players, turn off all the third-party queue syncing mechanisms, and then you don't have to deal with that, right? Because for players who do want to just do epic battlegrounds, kind of like Star Wars Battlefront 2 style, and just kind of run through like a stormtrooper, and I totally understand that. I was really into that for a while as well. I think that this is good. Obviously, like the Battleground community has not been getting a lot of updates for a very long time. Be curious as to know why. Maybe it's because they overinvested into Ashran and didn't see the results that they wanted to. Because I remember seeing Ashran updates like into BFA, and it came out in WOD. It seemed like they really wanted Ashran to be this like perfect world PvP zone and epic BG experience, and it just ended up being this 40-player clump in the middle, and it's just not good. So they've got a couple of screenshots here. Hopefully I'm going to be able to pop these up on the stream to be able to show you guys. Just so it's located in the new zone, which is like the Void Storm or something like that. My concern is that they say clash at the path of predation and recruiting neutral forces, which is right here in the middle. So my first concern is that we're going to be clashing right in the middle, is 40 versus 40, lagging out, and melee DPS can't do anything. That's my first concern when I look at this. The next is that it looks very similar to Ashran, where you push forward to an objective and it looks like you want to try and take that. So either you're going to get pushed forward or get pushed back, and then stage 3, you'll be able to push to there until you get to the final battle, which is likely going to include a boss. So to me, at least based on the layout so far, I'm not trying to be like a super big pessimist. Obviously, I'm maybe not known as the biggest optimist, but based on just the graphics that we have here is that it looks very similar to Ashram, where you have those objectives that you're pushing towards each other, clashing back and forth until you get into Storm Shield to get into the base and then kill the enemy general. I don't know how many people want a reskinned Ashram, especially if it's going to be 40 players clumped up in the middle just lagging out and melee can't move. I am very concerned for that. I think for most people, they've said that it's more like Alteric Valley. But the thing about Alteric Valley is that there were sub-objectives, right? You could go after Belinda, go after bunkers, defend your bunker, attack a bunker or tower or whatever. And there were side objectives, collect resources to summon in bosses. So not all of the players are incentivized only to be in the field of strife in the middle and then push each other back the entire time. There was other ways to kind of sneak around and force the fight to become more split up. Otherwise, you might lose. So I do hope that those things will be included, because otherwise we might just have an Ashran 2.0 experience. And that's my biggest concern with it. And you can see here the Horde Keep is located here with NPCs and guards. And it's also, it's going to be a world PvP zone, right? So it's going to have rotating war mode and world quests, which I think is really cool. You can see like a bunch of different world quests here. So if you want to be a world PvP player, maybe it's going to be a better experience as a world PvP zone, because again, you'll be more split up as opposed to in that battleground case. Neutral PvP hub, it's a master's terrace, it's a dueling area. There are PvP vendors and portals to PvP areas. So likely you're gonna be able to use this as a major hub. Now as a world PvP zone, I think it's probably gonna be a lot better, just because of the being spread out a lot more to different locations. And I wonder if it will be faction based or free for all, because I don't know about you guys, but my favorite world PvP, which I actually do a lot of world PvP relative to Epic Battlegrounds at least, is the free for all ones, where you just jump in and there's no faction, it's just free for all. You can get like 1v10 or whatever. I enjoy those more. I also hope that there's going to be limited layering in this world PvP zone, because I think what was cool at World PvP in the past is that you'd make an arrival with somebody while you're leveling up, and you might see them 10 levels later and remember how they killed you while you were trying to do that quest, and then you encounter them again. And that gets completely blown out of the water with layering. Now, layering makes sense when you're starting out and you're in the beginning questing zone and everything's flooded and you can't tag a mob, although that's less of an issue now, but a bigger issue is in the launch zones. But in an end game World PvP zone, where how many people have war mode enabled, etc., I'm really hoping that layering is going to be a lot more limited to kind of build up those world PvP stories and rivalries, and hopefully so players aren't just like dodging layers and mass bulking and they don't see any opposition, because I think that those could be issues. But as a world PvP zone, I think it's likely going to stand to be a lot better. I really like that it's got the dueling area. It's probably going to be pretty similar to Dornogal, and we're going to have like this dedicated area relative to how it was in the War Within. So as a world PvP zone, I think it looks awesome. As an Epic BG, I'm just concerned that it looks very linear, very similar to Ashran, and how good that experience is going to be overall. So those are my thoughts. Obviously, they didn't address things like PvP reward systems, rating structures, MMR systems, or anything like that. They didn't address anything like that. My expectation is probably that they're just not going to be doing anything related to that. Now, obviously, they have a lot on their plate moving forward with the rest of the stuff that's in this. This seems to be much more focused around casual BG players, world PvP players, right? Which often those players say they're neglected. They don't get a lot of content, which in some cases is true. I think in Dragonflight, you guys got a lot of really cool World PvP rewards. I actually really enjoyed World PvP over the past couple of expansions. But from an Epic Battleground standpoint, for sure, I would agree. And Battleground standpoint, and getting new players in is obviously not a bad idea either. Would have been nice if there was some interviews with some other PvP-related questions with PvP devs that would be able to answer them. There weren't. I don't know if that's entirely my fault, because I actually signed up to do an interview, but I think with how I booked my flight, the interviews were done the day later than what I booked my flight, so maybe they would have given me one. I don't know, but there really wasn't a lot, if anything, in regards to that, so this is pretty much all we've got. So I think as a World PvP player, this is definitely very exciting. As an Epic BG player, unless they fix the queue syncing and fix the like 40-player stacking lag fest, it might not end up being that great as an Epic Battleground. And getting new players in is awesome. I still think that they should consider using AI at lower ratings, like 1500 rating and below. Each team gets AI healers, so they get instant queues, because the vast majority of people are playing at 1500 or lower, and they probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference, but they'd be happy because they're getting instant queues and they're getting practice in, which is really important for retaining those players, right? They're sitting a longer queue, they're getting less practice, they get better at a slower rate, and they're more likely to give up. So hopefully this means that there will be other ways to incorporate this to help players learn or expedite queue times, in order to improve the mode as a whole. But the next one is user interface. So they revealed a lot of new stuff. They've got the cooldown manager, customizable aura tracking, debuff states and sound alerts, combat assistant, smarter logic for assisted highlights and single button play, personal resource bar, now a HUD element with full edit mode customization. Edit mode has been expanded to include more. Accessibility includes adjustable text sizes and improved tooltips. And they've got new tools, includes customizable nameplates, damage meters, and boss ability timelines. So their main goal here is listening to the feedback that people quit WoW because they log on and it's like, oh my god, I got to download 10 more add-ons from this exterior website before I can actually play the game. And it does seem like they're incorporating a lot of those add-ons. They're not just removing them and deleting them. They're just going to give them to you baseline. Because I was not expecting like boss ability timelines or call-outs or anything like that. Damage meters, sure. And from what I've seen for screenshots, the nameplates actually do look good. They've got a lot of elements from big debuffs. My biggest concern with the baseline user interface was that it wasn't going to be delivered amazingly well, and that it would feel like it's missing things that the add-ons were able to provide, or I had some very big concerns for it. But if this is like one of the first looks at it, I thought it was a lot better than what I was anticipating for it to begin with. And I think as long as they're iterating on feedback with the community, that it's just going to improve from that standpoint. And again, we didn't see anything with PvP. We didn't see, sorry, I'm a little bit sick from all of the traveling. My voice is like dried out as hell right now, but we didn't see anything for PvP UI. And the PvP UI is kind of, it's there, but it's like just lacking a little bit of the polish that you can get with some add-ons like Gladius. So I'm kind of hoping for a little bit of a touch up there. Judging by the amount of content we got for PvP, maybe that's not going to happen, right? Maybe that's not going to happen. Maybe this entire focus is like Delves and Mythic Plus, and then we kind of have to hope that it converts into PvP. Transmog updates. You're going to be able to transmog based on the slot of gear, so you don't have to waste time every time you switch a helmet transmogging it, which is really nice because in PvP you get Honor gear, World PvP, Conquest gear, you get upgrade the helmet 4 times, you have to transmog it 4 times. You don't have to do that anymore. It's just going to auto transmog your helm slot, save you a little bit of gold, save you a little bit of time, and you can save outfits as well, and then that will be completely free. So a little bit of transmog updates. But remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. That's my concern with this, and likely means that player housing will have some element of a massive gold sink. They wouldn't just like take away their gold farm from transmogging gear without putting it somewhere else. But if you're not interested in player housing at all, you're just getting free transmog. That's my hunch. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe you guys can screenshot this or clip it or whatever, and then when we're in the future, we can see if that actually comes to fruition or not, with player housing just costing a metric ton of gold. And that's why they made transmog free. But I'm always of the opinion that there's no such thing as a free lunch. The next one is that they're improving the new and returning player experience for Midnight, which is a really big deal, right? For the most part, they throw you on this kind of like random island with random intermingling races of the World of Warcraft universe, and you just kind of go through this wacky adventure on the island. The one thing it doesn't teach you, though, is how to pick a spec that's most in the meta so that you're not ignored in LFG, how to like optimize your damage so you're not kicked from the group when people are like, you're doing 1/5 the damage that you're expected to do. It just kind of shows you the game in like this little cookie snapshot area, and maybe it took enough to get you going on like World Quest or something, but as far as like getting you into the end game, I just don't think it really delivers on that. Maybe it doesn't need to, but I feel like almost nothing does. It's like the difficulty leveling of the starting area, and the leveling is very low, and then you get max level and it just jumps up in an elevator, just skyrockets straight to the moon, like one of those rides in the carnival that shoots you up like that. And it's just like the most jarring experience, because it's usually a smooth transition, right? The game slowly gives you more abilities, introduces more challenge, and it rises over time, and then you're prepared once you've gotten to max level to start doing that content. But right now it kind of just like holds your hand, and then you get there and it's like a slap in the face, like, oh, you're actually terrible at the game and no one's going to invite you because you don't know what your challenge do, and you picked a bad spec, and yeah, there you go, bye-bye, you had no achievements, we're not inviting you. It ends up being a bad experience. So I'm curious to see what they're doing here. Exile's Reach has been retailored to funnel beginning players into Dragonflight. Major lore characters like Wrathion, Khadgar, and Alexstrasza will be included. Chromie time will still exist for alt, but first timers will be taken to the Waking Shore and Dragonflight right after Exile's Reach. This beginner player version of Dragonflight includes story mode versions of the final raid bosses so that the full story can be experienced. See, I don't really understand why you'd want to put them in Dragonflight, which isn't like leading them up into Midnight. I just don't understand that from like a story element, right? Wouldn't you want it to start in the War Within? and then do all the story modes there so you can understand where you're currently caught up, right? Because like, how relevant is the Dragonflight story other than the one dragon dude who took the crystal, right? Like, I don't really know why we wouldn't want to do the War Within instead. Returning players will be able to take a tour through the Arathi Highlands with Jaina or Thrall to get them up to speed. This is a simplified, directed version of the game tailored for returning players. You can drop in and out at any time. Completing the scenario will grant level appropriate gear, whatever level you happen to be. This experience includes tutorials for skywriting, interrupts, and more. Okay, well, I mean, that's a step up from other things that I've seen. Interrupts is actually included in this. So teaching players, the important mechanics and concepts that if you don't get any introduction to them at max level and you join a Mythic Plus group, you don't know how to interrupt or stop a cast, you get kicked out of the group. So like this one statement here, just interrupts and more. How to use crowd control would be a nice one. Maybe a little bit of how to maximize your damage. They've got the one button rotation, right? If that's the optimal way to do your rotation, want to just show that a little bit in game to somebody who doesn't maybe want to use it. The War Within catch-up will offer a shortened questing version experience of the War Within, hitting all the story highlights for players just joining the World Soul Saga. This should only take a couple of hours while it is available to everyone. This is how beginners will level from 70 to 80. Oh, okay, so now I understand. You're going to be questing through Dragonflight, which then leads you into the War Within. Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. The little kind of pre-story of Dragonflight will set you up for 70 levels, and then you'll be going into the War Within catch-up in order to get to midnight. I think that makes sense. I think it's important that they're recognizing this because it's so many years of content that a new player is going to be completely stretched. But how many new players are actually playing, right? I think Cataclysm tried to do the same thing when it updated the classic world. But did it actually have any significant impact? We'll have to see. I definitely seen this as like a major point of contention and criticism amongst online content creators. I just wonder how much does it really have, right? It's easy to criticize things. This is why the game is bad. That's why it's sucking. This is what needs to change. But you don't actually know if it's true or what the result will actually be. So do I agree that it's good to try to have a better onboarding experience? Yes. Will it matter if there aren't actually any new players? Maybe not. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think getting new players, biggest thing is story. I think Midnight, it's as a story is probably holding close to like Legion as far as fantasy levels. So it's likely a good opportunity to get a lot of new players, and then a change like this will be very welcome. There's obviously new mounts, cosmetic rewards coming with that. Prey, which is a new kind of world content system where you'll be able to opt in seeking bigger challenges and hunt down powerful targets. Kind of reminds me of like Monster Hunter or something like that. So we got the Sims from Player Housing. We got Monster Hunter. They're really trying to like drag in concepts from a lot of different games, which has worked for them in the past, right? Pet battles from Pokemon. Whenever they try to incorporate other existing popular games, and how would the WoW version of this feel? It's generally been pretty good, right? They tried it with Torghast, maybe not the best example of like the roguelike systems, although I think a lot of players probably would have liked Torghast more if it wasn't mandatory and you're forced to do it. But this is like very similar. And I do actually wonder what this will do for world PvP. Are there going to be prey in the new world PvP zone that you can go after players, or are they trying to like separate PvP players from PvE players? Like PvE players get the prey in the new zones, PvP players get the world quests in the new world PvP area, and they're trying to separate it entirely, because I kind of like the intermingling of the two in that regard. For me, obviously this isn't going to affect like PvP gearing. I don't know how much I'm going to really try to do this prey system, but for people who want world content, I'm sure it's going to be a good time. Obviously delves are doing well because they're iterating on it a lot, right? Look at how many new delves there are. So if you're a solo PvE player, I think for a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't have a lot of delve experience, but I think a lot of players enjoy these because you don't have to deal with the meta getting declined by LFG. You can do it by yourself or with however many of your friends that you want to do it with, and you don't have to care about role locking. Like, did we get a tank? Did we get a healer? Is everybody playing the most fodder classes? You don't have to really be concerned with all that. So I'm not surprised to see its participation doing well because it avoids all those hurdles. And if it gives you even remotely competitive gear, if not equal gear, I don't see why this wouldn't be a much more popular mode for PvE, which begs the question as to maybe they should remove roles entirely, or is the Trinity actually important for WoW's long-term sustainability, or is it potentially holding it back? That's an entirely other debate though, but obviously Delve players are going to be very happy. There's new dungeons as well. Now they're reimagining existing zones as opposed to doing entirely new zones from the ground up. Which is something that I was kind of thinking they would have to do if they want to do this faster release cadence for expansions, because it's just going to be so much development time, so much art to actually do them from the ground up. But the new zones do seem cool, and I think it's nice because a lot of community content creators and players have given criticisms that they kind of just let the old world die. It just stays the way that it is, with the Scourge invading and just kind of taking over in the Blood Elf starting zone. That's going to all be updated. And now there's new dungeons that correlate along with that. And this most recent Race to World First, a lot of players were really satisfied with the raid experience, Mythic Plus experience. I think it's just PvP really that could use a little bit of touch up like Mythic Plus got with regards to rewards, which is why I was a little bit sad not to see anything related to that. And with the raids, they're splitting up into 3 different raids, which is kind of more like a classic WoW style where you have like a 2 boss raid, a single boss raid, and a 6 boss raid. Technically, it's totaling about the same amount of bosses, but they're in different locations. From a fantasy standpoint, I think players, it might maybe almost be deceiving. Like there's more content because it's being split up into these different locations. We kind of have to wait and see if that ends up being the case. But what did you guys prefer? Did you like doing Karazhan and then having to fly over to Gruul's lair and then having to fly over to Hellfire Peninsula to do Magtheridon's lair? Was that better, or would you rather just everything been in one area? I get from the visual fatigue, it'll be nice to have different locations. You're not just looking at the same outlook, and it's a little bit more similar to Classic. In that regard, I'm a bit curious how the Race to World First is going to go with this. Like, are players going to target the single boss raid first to try and get the world first for it? How's that all going to break down? How does the top 100 guilds as well for achievement work with this being split up? But this definitely seems to be a little bit more of a Classic influenced decision, and maybe just trying to spice things up because they've been following the same formula for a while. But I'll be curious to see what the raiders actually think about this. There's new zone events in the Void Storm coming through here, so a lot of world content. New zones look cool. Very excited for this stuff. Very excited for the reimagined world. I think it's good that we're incorporating it more, kind of constantly updating it, all the different screenshots that they've given to us. There's also a new allied race, which players thought was coming out in the War Within, but it's coming out in the next expansion, Midnight. And what I thought was interesting about this is that these guys can be druids. Now, druids are typically not included on the new allied races because I would imagine they're very expensive. They need travel form and cat form and all these other things. Shaman also are sometimes not included because the totems need to be customizable. But this race is going to be able to be druid, hunter, mage, monk, priest, rogue, shaman, warlock, and a warrior. They didn't reveal anything as far as power, which I think for a lot of people is the main focus here. We don't know if they're going to be super OP. It looks like they focus around kind of around nature. It's impossible to really know. Their homes are shaped from roots and glowing mushrooms. There's really not a lot revealed here. We'll have to wait and see when the next major update regarding them is coming out, which could be pretty soon because they said the alpha, I think, is going to be like just a couple of weeks away, which is kind of crazy, but that's when we'll get to see that. Now, the next one, which is probably the one that I'm most excited for, is that this wasn't a meme, apparently. They're going to be doing Void Demon Hunters, which is definitely pushing the limits. I guess, like, okay, they could absorb the power of the Fel. Why can't they absorb the power of the Void as well? So Void Metamorphosis, Collapsing Star. It seems like a ramping spec where you build up to these big hits, which honestly I'm surprised they're doing that concept, because in PvE players complain about ramping classes being bad because they just want to pull an AoE instantly. So if you have to ramp, you're inferior to a lot of other classes. And then in PvP, people complain about ramping because if the ramping actually pays off, you usually just one-shot somebody. So it's very strange to me that they decided to go for this kind of hardcore ramping style when there's been so much feedback against that in all aspects of the game. So I do wonder how that's going to ultimately play out. It seems fun on paper, right? You attack and build up these attacks over time, and then they just absolutely smash. But in a practical standpoint, they usually end up falling flat. Now, maybe that means that their dungeon design is going to change. Maybe that means the PvP design is going to change and the pacing is going to change. But I don't know. They've said for a while that PvE won't be about one-shots. It'll be about sustained damage. It just ends up being about one-shots. So I'm holding my expectations in reserve. If the meta is about burst and one-shotting in PvP, the spec could be really good. And PvE, it might be really bad, because if all the trash mobs are dead before you hit your peak ramp, nobody cares and they're not going to want you, which has been an issue for almost all of the ramping style of gameplay that they've tried to implement. So from a gameplay standpoint, I have major concerns for it. From a fantasy standpoint, it seems really wild that you're going to be able to get to control the Void. And it does mean that you'll be getting a new hero talent tree as well. which I think they called the Annihilator. This has to do with meteors, which is the play off of the Metamorphosis in Warcraft 3, where you shoot giant rocks in your Metamorphosis form, which is probably just likely going to all be passive damage. Player housing, obviously, the big key feature that everybody was talking about. It's going to have neighborhoods, going to have like some activities that you can play around in it. A little bit concerned that like they're introducing all this world content that gets you out into different zones, an entirely world PvP zone dedicated to that, but then also spend time in your house. Like, you can only be in so many areas of the world, and maybe it's just fine. Maybe you just, if you want to be the cozy gamer in your house all the time, you can do that. If you want to be the sweaty world PvPer, you can go do that. If you want to do this prey PvE farming, you can do that. Play WoW the way you want. That's how they've been advertising it for a while. So I don't think that's too surprising. And you see there's a lot of stuff on here that players have been complaining about for a while. They're also doing an item level squish where, right now we're in the millions. They said they're going to take it down to the thousands. So basically every single thing the community has complained about, except for maybe hardcore PvPers, they're iterating on. Accessibility of the game at a low level, new player experience, PvP as well. Battleground players are satisfied. World PvP content. They've got new raid content, new housing content, new worlds content. There's new spec. There's a bunch of new talents as well for everything, and more talent points to spend. So you're going to be able to just get more stuff. A new race. Honestly, there's a lot more stuff in this than I thought they'd be able to fit, given the cadence that they've given themselves to release expansions. So there's a lot to consider. I think basically the only person that would be even remotely disgruntled by all of this is going to be like rated PvP players, right? Like, we just want our reward system updated a little bit, maybe a little bit of an extra amount thrown in there, just a little bit of spice there. It seems very small, and I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see if that actually ends up happening or not. But I hope you guys enjoyed my breakdown of this. Content is gonna resume as per normal unless my illness accelerates, but I think I'm blowing through the end of it now out my nose, so hopefully it'll be over soon. Missed you guys. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.